He gripped the car door to steady himself, the words still ringing in the hot air. "Sir, I can make your daughter walk again." And in that instant, every wall he'd built around his heart began to crack. The city sprawled beneath him like a glittering promise, but to Adrian Holt, it might as well have been a graveyard. From the floor-to-ceiling window of his high-rise office, he stared out at the endless stretch of lights, each representing a life he could never touch, a problem he could never solve. His reflection in the glass was sharp, silver at the temples, jaw clenched, eyes hollow from too many sleepless nights. Behind him, a phone vibrated. He ignored it. In the corner of his office, a small wheelchair sat folded, as if waiting, as if mocking. His daughter's laughter, once bright, once the only thing that made all the billions mean something, had grown silent these past 2 years. Since the accident. Since the doctors said no hope. Since he realized that all his power, all his wealth, could not buy the one thing that mattered, her joy. Miles below, in an alley thick with the smells of roasting corn and motor oil, Luca darted between vendors, his bare feet quick on the cracked pavement. A boy of maybe 12, hair wild, eyes wide and dark as night, Luca lived in the in-between spaces of the city, the places people didn't see. He carried a worn satchel slung across his chest, filled not with valuables but scraps, a crust of bread, a broken comb, a bottle cap he thought might one day become something. As he passed a stall, he paused to break his bread in half, offering it to a limping dog that wagged its tail in thanks. Luca smiled softly, his stomach growling, but it felt right. The dog mattered. They both mattered, even if no one else saw them. The world around him was alive with color and chaos, neon signs flickering, laughter spilling from open doorways, the sweet sour scent of overripe fruit mingling with rain-slicked asphalt. But all of it faded when his eyes caught the gleam of a long black car pulling to the curb ahead. Inside that car, Adrian sat rigid, his hand resting on his daughter's small shoulder. Emily, 8 years old, stared out at the world she no longer touched. The wheelchair felt too big for her tiny frame. The blanket across her legs was more for comfort than warmth. Adrian's fingers tightened just slightly, as if his grip could keep her from slipping away, not physically, but emotionally, into that quiet place where she went sometimes, the place where he couldn't follow. "We'll just be a minute, pumpkin," he murmured. His voice cracked in the middle of the word. Emily gave the faintest nod, her gaze drifting to the boy on the street. A boy who looked at her not with pity, not with fear, but with wonder, as if seeing something no one else did. Luca's heart thudded. There she was, the girl from his dream. He'd seen her, night after night, a pale child with sad eyes who couldn't run, couldn't play. And he had seen himself, standing before a man made of stone, offering hope. Could it be? He took a breath and stepped closer, drawn by something he couldn't name. His voice was soft at first, swallowed by the city's roar. "Sir." Adrian didn't hear. His mind was elsewhere, on meetings, on treatments that failed, on promises from doctors who spoke in riddles and percentages. Luca tried again, louder, his small fists clenched at his sides. "Sir. Please." Adrian turned, irritated, ready to wave off yet another beggar. But the boy's eyes stopped him, so clear, so full of strange certainty. "Sir, I can make your daughter walk again." For a moment, the city fell silent. Adrian froze, the words slicing through him. The driver shifted uncomfortably. A vendor nearby stopped stacking fruit. Even Emily blinked, her lips parting in surprise. What was it about the boy's voice? The way it trembled, yet rang with truth? Adrian's throat tightened. Anger rose, quick and sharp. Asterisk, how dare this child give false hope? How dare he speak of things he couldn't understand? Asterisk, and yet, somewhere deep beneath the layers of rage and grief, a sliver of something stirred. Could it be? In that pause, when the world held its breath, Emily's soft voice broke the stillness. "Papa, maybe he can." Adrian swallowed hard, the weight of the moment pressing down. He looked at Luca, really looked. Bare feet, tattered clothes, eyes that had seen too much. Not a fraud. Not a con man. Just a boy. A boy who believed. What would you do if someone you least expected offered you hope in your darkest moment? Would you listen, or walk away? Tell me in the comments. Your answer might help someone else struggling to believe. Hello, my beautiful family and friends. I'm so happy to have you here. If you're ready to be part of this special story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and share in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing from you. And be sure to stay tuned, because tomorrow I'll be back with another story that's just as unforgettable, and you won't want to miss it. Alright, let's begin this journey together. The driver coughed, snapping Adrian out of his trance. Without a word, Adrian opened the door, stepped out into the night air heavy with rain and gasoline, and stood face to face with the beggar boy. Luca's heart pounded. He had spoken the words. Now, the story begins. Hello, my beautiful family and friends. I'm so happy to have you here. If you're ready to be part of this special story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and share in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing from you. And be sure to stay tuned, because tomorrow I'll be back with another story that's just as unforgettable, and you won't want to miss it. Alright, let's begin this journey together. The night seemed to lean in closer, as if the city itself were listening. Adrian stood stiff, towering over the boy. Rain threatened in the clouds above, the air thick with the scent of ozone and spilled oil. The words hung between them, raw and unbelievable. Say that again, Adrian said, his voice low, dangerous. Luca swallowed hard but didn't flinch. His hands trembled at his sides, but his gaze stayed steady. Sir, I can help her walk. Please, let me try. The driver shifted, glancing around nervously as passers-by slowed, curiosity piqued. A few street vendors whispered, craning their necks to see what was happening. Adrian's jaw worked as he struggled for control. You think this is a game? He snapped, his voice cutting through the night. You dare use my daughter, my child, for your tricks? For your schemes? No. Luca's voice cracked, but his eyes glistened with the force of his belief. No trick, sir. I don't want anything. I don't want your money. His words spilled out in a rush, desperate to be heard. I had a teacher once. He showed me things, how to help. I saw your daughter in my dreams. I knew I'd find her. Please. Emily watched, wide-eyed, her small fingers clutching the edge of the car door. There was something about the boy's voice, his trembling sincerity, that made her heart ache. She had heard enough empty promises to know the difference. This didn't feel like one. Papa, she whispered. Her voice was so soft it was almost lost to the hum of the city. But Adrian heard it. Please, can we let him try? His heart clenched at the plea. He wanted so badly to say yes. But what if this boy gave Emily hope only to snatch it away again? Could he bear to see that light die in her eyes a second time? The air between them was electric with tension. Backhand index pointing right. Have you ever stood at the edge of hope, unsure whether to step forward or turn away? Share your moment below. Your story could inspire someone struggling right now. Adrian exhaled sharply, dragging a hand through his hair. You don't know what you're talking about, boy, he said at last, his voice ragged. You can't help her. No one can. But even as he said it, part of him wished it weren't true. Luca's shoulders slumped, but only for a heartbeat. He took a step back, not in defeat, but in quiet understanding. I'll be here tomorrow, he said softly. And the next day. Until you let me try. His voice dropped to a whisper. Because I know I meant to help her. Before Adrian could respond, the boy turned and melted into the night, his small figure swallowed by the shadows of the alley. The murmuring crowd dispersed, leaving behind only the echo of his words. Adrian stood rooted to the spot, torn between fury and a strange, aching hope that refused to die. He turned to Emily, whose eyes were still fixed on where the boy had vanished. Home, Adrian said gruffly to the driver, climbing back into the car. But the silence between father and daughter on the ride back was thick with unspoken questions neither of them could answer. The Holt estate sat like a fortress on the hilltop, gated, guarded, gleaming with wealth. But within its manicured hedges and marble halls, grief lived like a permanent guest. Adrian paced his study, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand, the boy's words circling his mind like ghosts he couldn't exorcise. I can make your daughter walk again. He could still see the boy's eyes, too old for his face, too steady for his age. He hated how the memory wouldn't fade, how it clung to him even now, hours later, as he walked past his daughter's room and heard the quiet hum of her lullaby playlist. He stopped. Emily's voice floated softly through the door. He wasn't lying, Papa. I could feel it. Adrian opened the door. She sat in bed, her legs covered with the same quilt her mother had made before the accident. She looked so small in the king-sized bed, her hair loose around her shoulders, eyes bright with something he hadn't seen in months, a flicker of hope. He stepped in, unsure what to say. He was just a street kid, he said finally, gently but firmly. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Emily's fingers played with the edge of the blanket. But he didn't want anything. He didn't even ask for money. That means something, right? Adrian sighed and sat on the edge of her bed. People like him say things they don't understand. Sometimes they believe it so hard they think it's true. But believing doesn't make it real. But what if this time it is, she whispered. That silence that followed hit him harder than any word she could have said. Her voice was so soft, so full of longing, it fractured something inside him. In the alleys of the city, Luca sat cross-legged in his usual corner, legs pulled to his chest, back against the wall. A flickering streetlight above buzzed and spat. His stomach rumbled, but it wasn't food he hungered for. It was for a purpose. He had seen that little girl's eyes. He had felt her pain before he'd ever met her. And now, he'd failed. Or had he? He reached into his satchel and pulled out the worn strip of cloth he used to tie around his wrist. It had belonged to Master Dillon, the old man who once taught him breathing, healing, the power of presence and pressure points. Not every cure is made of science, the man had said. Some come from belief. Some from connection. And some from the place in us where spirit and body meet. Luca whispered the words to himself now. Some from connection. The next morning, Adrian stood by the garage watching the morning fog roll in. His driver approached. Sir, the boy is here. Again. Same spot. Adrian clenched his jaw. Ignore him. But sir, the driver hesitated. He's just standing there. Not asking for anything. Just watching. Adrian said nothing. 3 days passed. Luca returned every day. Rain, shine, it didn't matter. He stood quietly across the street from the estate's gate, his face still, gaze steady. He never called out, never waved. He just waited. As if he knew the moment would come. On the 4th night, Adrian was halfway through his 3rd drink when Emily wheeled herself into the study. He's still waiting, she said. I know, Adrian replied without turning. Why does that scare you? He turned to her sharply. It doesn't scare me. She raised an eyebrow, just like her mother used to. Yes, it does. You're afraid he's right. And you're afraid he's wrong. So you do nothing. That cut deeper than she could know. She added quietly, I dreamt I walked again last night. Adrian didn't respond. Backhand index pointing right when faced with the impossible. Do we protect ourselves from disappointment? Or risk everything for a chance at joy? What would you do? Leave your answer in the comments below. That night, Adrian lay awake, the boy's face flashing behind his eyes. Every rational part of him screamed to forget it. But the father in him, that part was drowning. The storm rolled in without warning. Dark clouds swallowed the moon, and the heavens cracked open with thunder that shook the streets. Rain fell in sheets, drenching the city, flooding gutters, and turning alleyways into rivers. Adrian cursed under his breath as the windshield wipers of his sleek black car struggled to keep up. Emily sat beside him, tense, watching the water rise along the roadside. The driver's voice came through the intercom, strained. Sir, the bridge ahead is closed. We'll need to find shelter or risk getting stuck. Adrian scanned the street ahead, deserted, save for a flicker of light from what looked like an old temple or shrine set back from the road. There, he said, pointing. The car pulled into the crumbling courtyard. Adrian stepped out first, shielding Emily as he helped her into her chair. The wind lashed at them, the rain cold and relentless. They hurried into the shelter of the temple's entrance. And there, sitting quietly beneath the cracked archway, was Luca. He rose slowly, his clothes soaked through, hair plastered to his forehead. His eyes met Adrian's, and for a moment, no words passed between them. Just the sound of the storm's fury outside, and the thunder of 2 hearts caught in a moment neither had asked for. Emily gasped softly. It's him. Adrian stiffened. He had no intention of speaking. No intention of letting this boy into their night. But the storm had done what neither pride nor will could. It had forced them into the same fragile shelter. Luca spoke first, his voice low but steady. I didn't follow you. I come here when it rains. Emily smiled despite the chill. We were just looking for a place to stay dry too. Adrian's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The three of them stood in awkward silence, the only sound the rain drumming against the stone. Minutes stretched. The storm showed no sign of letting up. Luca busied himself lighting a small candle from a match he kept dry inside his satchel. The flickering glow softened the harsh edges of the space, casting their faces in warm, trembling light. Emily shivered, and without a word, Luca slipped off his threadbare jacket and offered it to her. Adrian opened his mouth to protest, but stopped when he saw his daughter's face. The small kindness mattered to her, more than he could understand. They sat in the dim light, the storm hemming them in. Emily broke the silence first. "What's your name?" "Luca," he answered. "I'm Emily. And this is my papa." Luca nodded, glancing at Adrian, then back at Emily. I know who you are." Her eyes sparkled, curious. "How?" Luca hesitated. "I dreamed about you. Before I ever saw you. That's why I spoke to your papa that day." Adrian rubbed his temple. "Dreams don't heal broken bodies," he said, his voice tired. "Sometimes they show the way," Luca replied quietly. Backhand index pointing right. Have you ever had a moment where fate or coincidence put you face to face with what you were avoiding? Did you take the chance, or let it pass? Share your experience in the comments. Someone out there might need to hear it. As the rain poured on, something shifted. The fury in Adrian's heart softened, if only slightly. The boy wasn't pushing, wasn't begging. He was just there. And Emily, for the first time in a long while, looked peaceful. The storm outside raged. But inside the small crumbling temple, three souls sat together in the glow of one tiny flame, caught between pride and possibility, between fear and the faintest whisper of hope. The storm wore itself thin by dawn, leaving behind a sky streaked with silver and pink. The city awoke slowly beneath the wash of rain, but inside the temple, time seemed to have slowed, as if holding its breath for what came next. Emily lay curled under her father's coat, her breathing soft and even. Adrian had dozed in fits and starts, but his eyes opened at every sound, his body coiled with tension he couldn't release. And Luca sat cross-legged on the temple stone floor, staring at the little candle that had burned down to a nub, lost in thought. The storm had forced them together. But now the storm inside Adrian's chest, the storm of disbelief, guilt, longing, was louder than the rain ever was. Finally, as light spilled through the cracks in the temple walls, Adrian spoke. "Tell me." His voice was rough with exhaustion, but steady. "Who taught you to say those things? To believe you could help someone like her?" Luca blinked, startled. But there was no challenge in the question. Just the quiet ache of a father trying to understand. He lowered his gaze to his hands, rough and scarred from street life. "Master Dylan," he said softly. "A healer. He found me when I was younger, after I got sick. Everyone thought I wouldn't survive. But he helped me. Not with medicines. With his hands. His voice. His belief. He said I had the gift too. That sometimes, the body just needs reminding how to heal itself. And the heart too." Adrian frowned, skeptical. "Where is this man now?" Luca's throat tightened. "Gone. Bandits robbed him on a country road a year ago. He died before anyone could help him." And there it was, the crack in Luca's armor. His voice trembled at the memory, his small shoulders stiff with the effort to stay composed. "I promised him I'd help someone someday. That I wouldn't waste what he taught me." Adrian studied him in the pale light. For the first time, he didn't see a beggar. He saw a boy who had lost as much as he had. A boy who carried his grief the only way he knew how, by trying to give others hope. Emily stirred then, her lashes fluttering. Her eyes opened and found Luca's. She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made a man want to believe in impossible things. "Good morning," she said, her voice small. "Morning," Luca replied, and his smile was just as soft. Adrian looked between them, his heart heavy. He wanted to protect her from disappointment. But how could he deny her this light in her eyes? The boy shifted, reaching into his satchel. He pulled out a small worn bead, just a bead on a leather cord. "Master Dylan gave me this. Said it was his daughter's. When I meet someone who needs help, I remember her. I remember that every life matters the same. He set it gently on the ground between them. Adrian stared at it. The leather was cracked, the bead simple, but it seemed to glow in the morning light like a jewel. Without thinking, Adrian asked, what was his daughter's name? Luca hesitated. His voice dropped to a whisper. Emily. Adrian's breath caught. Coincidence? Fate? His mind reeled. Backhand index pointing right. Do you believe in signs? Moments when the universe speaks in small, quiet ways? Have you ever followed such a sign? Tell me in the comments. Your story could give someone else the courage to listen. For a long while, no one spoke. The sun climbed higher, drying the rain-slick streets outside. Inside, the fragile thread of connection between a billionaire, a beggar boy, and a little girl grew stronger, woven from shared loss, shared hope, and a single simple name. The rain-washed streets glistened in the sunlight as the city began to hum with life again. But within the quiet of the temple, the world felt small and sacred. Adrian stood near the doorway, staring out at the city he thought he knew so well, his mind a storm of questions. How had it come to this? Seeking shelter with a street child, listening to talk of healers and beads as if they might matter. And yet, for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel entirely hollow. Behind him, soft laughter drew his attention. He turned to see Emily and Luca sitting cross-legged on the stone floor, faces close together, whispering like old friends sharing secrets. Luca was showing her how to place her palms flat on the cool stone, how to close her eyes and breathe slow and deep. Feel your body, not your legs, he said gently. Your whole body. Let it remember it belongs together. Emily's brow furrowed in concentration. The moment was fragile, filled with something like wonder. Adrian took a cautious step closer, watching as Luca guided Emily's hands, helping her focus. And then, just a flicker, just the smallest of movements, Emily's toe twitched beneath the blanket. Her eyes flew open, shining with shock and joy. Papa. I felt it. I moved it. Adrian froze. His breath hitched. He dropped to his knees beside her and pulled back the blanket. And yes, he saw it. Her foot, still small and delicate, but no longer lifeless. He looked up at Luca, disbelief warring with gratitude in his eyes. I told you she could, Luca whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. For a long moment, the three of them simply sat there, no billionaire, no beggar boy, no broken child. Just souls, tangled in the miracle of that small perfect movement. Emily giggled, the sound light and musical. See, Papa? I told you he wasn't lying. Adrian's throat tightened, his voice thick. You did, sweetheart. You did. The tension that had weighed on the air for so long began to ease. Luca's small smile turned shy. We can keep trying, if you want. Every day. A little at a time. Adrian nodded, his heart pounding. For once, he didn't have an answer, didn't need to have one. He just felt the weight of a possibility too precious to name. Backhand index pointing right. Sometimes, it's the smallest victories that remind us that hope isn't foolish. What tiny win in your life meant the most? Share it in the comments. It could inspire someone else to keep going. And so they stayed, the morning stretching into afternoon, working together in the quiet hush of the temple. Adrian watched as Emily laughed again, as Luca showed her simple exercises and spoke soft words of encouragement. For the first time in years, Adrian dared to let himself imagine a future where miracles weren't just things that happened to other people. It began with the sound of tires crunching over gravel, slow, deliberate, heavy. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the temple floor. Emily was practicing her breathing again, her fingers laced in Luca's, her legs wrapped in blankets. Adrian sat nearby, not hovering but close enough to reach her if she needed. The black SUV rolled to a stop outside. Adrian stood instantly, tension returning to his shoulders like a familiar coat. He recognized the vehicle. It bore the emblem of Dr. Raymond Shaw, his longtime friend, neurologist and advisor. The door slammed. A man in his late 50s, dressed immaculately in a gray coat, stormed into the temple's entrance, umbrella tucked under his arm, jaw tight. Adrian, he said, his voice sharp with disbelief. What the hell are you doing out here? Adrian didn't respond. Emily flinched at the man's tone. Luca instinctively moved closer to her, protective. Dr. Shaw's eyes scanned the scene. The girl in the wheelchair, the boy in rags, Adrian standing amid it all like a man caught in the middle of a dream he couldn't explain. "You brought your daughter here?" "With him." His voice rose, filled with judgment. "Do you understand how dangerous this is? This boy, he's a street rat. He could be sick, delusional, or worse. You're risking everything for what? A twitch? A placebo?" Adrian's jaw clenched. She moved her foot. Shaw laughed bitterly. "And you think that doesn't mean something? She's paralyzed, Adrian. You know that. We've been through every specialist, every technique. And now you're letting her get her hopes up because a barefoot orphan touched her arm and whispered sweet nothings." Luca stood then. "I never claimed to be a doctor, sir. I just said I wanted to help." Shaw turned to him like he might swat a fly. "You should be arrested. You have no idea what harm you're doing, giving false hope to a child." "That's enough," Adrian snapped, his voice thunderous. But the damage was done. Emily's eyes welled with tears, the fragile light inside her flickering. "Is it not real?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Did I just imagine it?" Luca stepped back. I didn't mean to make things worse." Adrian looked from his daughter to the boy. He felt himself splitting in two, his heart pulled in one direction, his pride in another. And somewhere in the chaos, fear took hold. He turned to Luca, voice hard. "You need to go." Luca's face fell. "But, we were just starting." "I said go." The words rang out like a slap. Emily sobbed, "Papa, please don't." "Enough, Emily." Adrian shouted, and instantly regretted it. Luca stood frozen, crushed under the weight of the moment. Slowly, he reached down, picked up the bead he had left, and tucked it into his pocket. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I thought maybe this time someone would believe me." And then he ran, out into the fading light, into the world that had always told him he didn't belong. That night, the house was silent. Emily wouldn't eat, wouldn't speak. She stared at her legs like they were strangers to her again. Adrian sat alone in his study, the untouched whiskey glass trembling in his hand. He'd driven away the only person who'd brought color back into his daughter's cheeks. Why? To protect her, or to protect himself. He picked up the small blanket Emily had brought back from the temple and clutched it to his chest. Backhand index pointing right. Have you ever pushed someone away, thinking it was for the best, only to realize too late they were exactly what you needed? What would you say to them now if you could? Share it in the comments. It might help someone find their way back. Outside, the wind picked up again. But this time, there was no storm, just a quiet, unrelenting ache where something beautiful had been broken. The house that once felt like a fortress, now felt like a cage. Adrian wandered its vast halls through the night, his footsteps echoing against marble and glass, chased by his own thoughts. The storm inside him hadn't calmed, it had grown. He stopped at Emily's door. Light spilled out beneath it, soft and warm. He pushed it open gently. She was awake, propped up on pillows, staring out at the moonlight. Her face was pale, streaked with silent tears. "Emily," he began. His voice cracked under the weight of guilt. She didn't look at him. "He was the only one who ever made me feel like I could hope again. And you sent him away." Her words sliced deep. Adrian crossed the room and knelt beside her bed. "Sweetheart, I thought I was protecting you. I thought I was doing the right thing." "Was it for me, Papa?" she asked, her voice small but steady. "Or was it because you were scared?" He had no answer. He dropped his gaze, ashamed. Across the city, Luca sat beneath the broken arch of a derelict building, knees hugged to his chest. The city that had always felt indifferent now felt cruel. He had dared to hope, and hope, as always, had betrayed him. He pulled the leather cord from his pocket, the bead cool in his palm. He closed his eyes, hearing Master Dylan's voice one last time. Some connections come only once, Luca. Don't let fear steal them. His heart ached, torn between leaving this city behind forever, or going back. Going back, even if it meant more pain. At dawn, Adrian stood at the estate's gates, his car idling beside him. His eyes burned from sleeplessness. His heart raced with uncertainty. "Sir?" the driver asked. "We're going to find him," Adrian said. His voice, for the first time in years, carried no pride. Only longing. They scoured the city. They asked vendors, drivers, and shopkeepers. All shook their heads, until an old woman pointed toward the crumbling remains of a church at the edge of town. There's a boy who sits there sometimes. A quiet one. Adrian stepped from the car into the cold morning light, the weight of his choice heavy but right. Inside the broken church walls, he saw him. Luca looked up, startled. He rose slowly, as if unsure whether to hope. I was wrong, Adrian said simply. His voice trembled, but he didn't care. I let fear win. But I won't let it win again. Please. Come home. Help us. For a long beat, Luca stared at him torn. And then, he nodded. Backhand index pointing right. Have you ever had to choose between pride and healing? Between walking away or reaching out? Share your story. It could give courage to someone who's standing at that same crossroad right now. Together, they walked back toward the car. Toward Emily. Toward what could be. The sun rose higher as they neared the estate, casting golden light across the city. The world felt new, like it was holding its breath for what might come next. Adrian's heart pounded with every turn of the wheels, every passing street bringing them closer to home. To Emily. To the possibility he had nearly destroyed. When they arrived, Emily was already at the window, watching the gate. Her eyes widened at the sight of the boy beside her father. A smile bloomed on her face, soft, hopeful, forgiving. Adrian opened the door for Luca, his hand gentle on the boy's shoulder. No more walls. No more pride. Just trust. They entered the house together. Emily wheeled herself forward, tears spilling over, but this time from relief. You came back, she whispered. I promised I would, Luca said. The room grew quiet as Luca knelt beside her, his small hands resting lightly on hers. The house staff watched from a distance, silent witnesses to the moment. Close your eyes, Luca said softly. Listen to your heart. It remembers. Emily obeyed. Feel your legs, he whispered. Not as broken things. As part of you. As strong. As ready. Adrian watched, every muscle in his body tense with longing. Minutes passed, minutes that felt like hours. And then slowly, tremblingly, Emily's foot moved. Her ankle flexed. A gasp filled the room. Adrian fell to his knees, his arms around his daughter, his tears falling onto her hair. She laughed, a sound like music, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Papa, I did it. You did, sweetheart, he choked out. You did. Luca smiled, his own eyes glistening. He reached into his pocket and pressed the bead into Emily's hand. For you. To remember you're stronger than you think. In the days that followed, Emily grew stronger. First a step, then two. Luca came every day, guiding her gently. Adrian stood by them, no longer the master of his world, but the student of his heart. The city whispered of the billionaire's daughter who walked again. But inside their home, it wasn't a miracle of legs, it was a miracle of love. Backhand index pointing right. When life gives you a second chance, at love, at healing, at connection, will you take it? Share your promise to yourself in the comments. Someone out there might need to see it. On the day Emily took her first unassisted steps, she turned to Luca and hugged him tight. Adrian knelt beside them both. I owe you everything, Adrian said quietly. No, Luca replied, smiling. You owe yourself. You chose to believe. And as the sun set over the city, their shadows stretched long together, three souls bound not by fate or fortune, but by the love they chose when it mattered most. Of course. Here's a powerful, attention-grabbing outro that ties the emotion of the story with a compelling reason for viewers to engage and return. You can imagine this as the final words over soft music or the first lines of your end screen. Backhand index pointing right. Before you scroll away, stop for a second. What if you are someone's Luca? What if you are the light in someone's darkest night? Drop a comment right now. Tell us. What's the one act of kindness or faith you believe can change a life? Your words might be exactly what someone needs today. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I'm sure you enjoyed it, didn't you? We have plenty more beautiful and interesting stories waiting for you. So go ahead, click the image on your screen and enjoy the next one. And don't forget, subscribe and hit the bell. Fire until then, stay open, stay brave, and remember, sometimes miracles were the face of a stranger.